Cordial's WSST, because local matters.
The J.W. Williams Funeral Directors have been proudly serving the people of this community since 1918. Service is our motto. The poor, the rich, the middle class and all are given the best of care and attention at all times. You have the privilege to select what you want. In your time of need, contact the capable, the competent, and the dependable staff of the J.W. Williams Funeral Home who is genuinely concerned with your care. At J.W. Williams Funeral Home, you are aptly served by the proprietor, president, Deacon Arthur L. Parker, who continues the traditions and values set forth by the past president, Dr. Napoleon Williams. Your announcements for the J.W. Williams Funeral Home Sunday morning program are Deacon Arthur L. Parker, Reverend Isaac H. Owens, Mrs. Calandra Wilkerson Parker, Minister Frankie Harmon, Miss Sandra Johnson, and Deacon Earl Clark, Jr.
Thank you, and good morning, friends. We come to you this morning to bring announcements, dedications, and songs. We certainly hope that your day may be brighter after listening to our program. The family of Mother Frances Westbrook Williams of Cordele, Georgia. The family of Mr. Blake Alexander Robinson of Gray, Georgia, and Americus, Georgia. The family of Mr. Robert Butts, Jr. of Cordele, Georgia. The family of Miss Lakeitha Monique Love of Rochelle, Georgia. The family of Mr. David Joshua Mitchell of Americus, Georgia, would like to thank their many friends for the food, the flowers, the condolences, and all other expressions of sympathy and kindness shown to them during their hours of sorrow and bereavement during the past week. Mother Frances Westbrook Williams, age 96, of 412 South 10th Street, Cordele, Georgia, died Wednesday, January 20th, at the Chris Regional Hospital in Cordele, Georgia. The funeral service for Mother Frances Westbrook Williams, age 96, was held Sunday, January 24th, on the grounds of her beloved Mount Zion First African Baptist Church in Cordele, Georgia. The pastor, Dr. Dan James III, officiated. Burial followed at the Bethel Cemetery in Cordele, Georgia. Survivors include her loving and devoted children, Mrs. Edwina Poole and Mr. Willie J. McGriff, and his wife, Mrs. Zelda McGriff of Cordele, Georgia, Mrs. Joanne Carwood of Detroit, Michigan, Mrs. Carnell Harris and her husband, Mr. Larry Harris of Warner Robins, Georgia, Deacon Tony Williams and his wife, Mrs. Jessica Williams of Cordele, Georgia, Miss Mitzi Williams and Miss Patty Johnson, both of Warner Robins, Georgia. A host of beloved grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and great-great-grandchildren, to include a grandson whom she reared, Mr. Quentin Peacock, a host of nieces and nephews to include Mrs. Clementine Baker of Oakland, Florida, a host of cousins, other relatives, and many, many sorrowing friends to include Mr. Milton Royal and Mr. Curtis Royal, whom she raised also. Survived Mother Frances Westbrook Williams, age 96, of 412 South 10th Street, Cordele, Georgia. Blake Alexander Robinson, age 27, of 320 Overland Way, Gray, Georgia, died Tuesday, January 19, at his residence in Macon, Georgia. The funeral service for Mr. Blake Alexander Robinson, age 27, was held Sunday, January 24th, graveside at Staley Memorial Gardens in Americus, Georgia. The Reverend Bryant Collier officiated. Survivors include his loving and devoted mother, Mrs. Jonatha Lewis of Gray, Georgia, his beloved and devoted father, Mr. Guster Robinson, and his wife, Mrs. Dietrich Robinson of Warner Robins, Georgia. Two beloved sisters, Miss Taylor Robinson of Marietta, Georgia, and Miss Jordan Turner of Kennesaw, Georgia. Two stepbrothers, Mr. Dexter Wilson and Mr. Darius Wilson, both of Bonaire, Georgia. His beloved grandparents, Evangelist Edna Roger of Conley, Georgia, and Mr. Guster Robinson Sr. and his wife, Mrs. Kay Robinson of Bronx, New York. Three beloved aunts, Mrs. Shonda Cole and her husband, Mr. Michael Cole of Zion, Illinois, Miss Rhonda Robinson and Miss Letitia Turner, both of Harlem, New York. Three devoted uncles, Mr. George Turner of Harlem, New York, Mr. Theodore Ingram of Atlanta, Georgia, Mr. Allen Northington of Augusta, Georgia. 10 beloved great aunts, Mrs. Esther Freeman of Jones Island, South Carolina, Miss Pearl Wilkins and Mrs. Margie Brightman, Mrs. Mary Barthel, all of Bronx, New York, Mrs. Annette Robinson of North Charlottetown, South Carolina, Miss Sharon Hobart of California, Miss Betty Ingram of Americus, Georgia, Miss May Bertha Barthel of New York, New York, Miss Jacqueline Mahone of Chicago, Illinois, Miss Deborah Barthel of Phoenix City, Alabama, and Miss Tracy Watts and her husband, Mr. Howard Watts of Virginia Beach, Virginia. 7 beloved great uncles, Mr. Samuel Barthel and his wife, Mrs. Annie Barthel, Mr. Lucius Barthel III, Mr. Albert Barthel, Mr. Calvin Barthel, all of Americus, Georgia, Mr. Julius Robinson of Charleston, South Carolina, Mr. Price Robinson and Mr. Eugene Robinson, all of Americus, Georgia. 2 honorary aunts, Mrs. Andrea McDowell and Ms. Leslie Collier, both of Macon, Georgia. A host of other relatives and many, many sorrowing friends survive. Mr. Blake Alexander Robinson, age 27, of 320 Overland Way, Gray, Georgia. Mr. Robert Butts, Jr., age 74, of 2106 South 7th Street, Cordele, Georgia, died Wednesday, January 20th, at the Cordele Health and Rehabilitation Center in Cordele, Georgia. The funeral service for Mr. Robert Butts, Jr., age 74, was held Wednesday, January 27th, graveside at the Mount Olive Baptist Church Cemetery in Warwick, Georgia. The Reverend Joseph Atkins, pastor of the Friendship Baptist Church, officiated. Survivors include his loving and devoted wife, Mrs. Geraldine Butts of Cordele, Georgia. His loving and devoted children, Mr. Troy Butts of Richardson, Texas, Mr. Dwayne Butts, Mr. Tyrone Carter, Miss Nettie Carter, and Mr. Ernest Carter, all of Cordele, Georgia. 20 beloved grandchildren, 5 great-grandchildren, His beloved and devoted sisters, Mrs. Melba Carter, Miss Jessie Mae Sanders, Miss Lucinda Butts, and Miss Louise Burgess, all of Cordele, Georgia. A beloved brother, Mr. Zonny Butts of Cordele, Georgia. His sisters-in-law, Miss Rosa Carter and Mrs. Edna Mae Carter. His brother-in-law, Mr. Henry Carter. A host of nieces, nephews, cousins, other relatives, and many, many sorrowing friends, to include Mr. Leonard Morgan of Cordele, Georgia, survived Mr. Robert Butts Jr., age 74, of 2106 South 7th Street, Cordele, Georgia. Miss Lakeitha Monique Love, age 31, of 105 Dennis Street, Rochelle, Georgia, died Monday, January 25th, at the Phoebe Putnam Memorial Hospital in Albany, Georgia. The funeral service for Miss Lakeitha Monique Love, age 31, was held Saturday, January 30th, graveside at the Piney Grove Baptist Church Cemetery in Rochelle, Georgia. Her pastor, the Reverend Travis Johnson, pastor of the Piney Grove Baptist Church, officiated. Survivors include her loving and devoted mother, Miss Maddie Love of Rochelle, Georgia. Her devoted companion of 15 years, Mr. Travis King of Pineview, Georgia. Her beloved and adored son, Master Darian King and Master Jaden King, both of Pineview, Georgia. Her loving and devoted sister, Miss Haley Love, and her husband, Mr. Courtney Love of Eastman, Georgia. Miss Missy Love and Miss Lisa Gibson and her husband, Paul Gibson, both of Rochelle, Georgia. Her beloved brother, Mr. Henry Love, and his wife, Mrs. Taisha Love, Mr. Maurice Love, both of Warner Robins, Georgia. Her beloved aunts and uncle, Mrs. Penny Moore and her husband, Mr. William Moore of Ashburn, Georgia, Miss Christine White of Fitzgerald, Georgia, Miss Ruby Lee Thornton, and Miss Mercy D. Kennedy, both of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, Miss Dorothy Emery, Mr. Arthur Grace, and Mr. Robert Grace, all of Rochelle, Georgia, Miss Audrey Mays of Atlanta, Georgia, Miss Audrey Major of Tampa, Florida, a host of nieces, nephews, cousins, to include a special cousin, Miss India Tisdale of Rochelle, Georgia, a host of other relatives, and many, many sorrowing friends, to include a special friend, Miss Wanda Burks of Albany, Georgia, Miss Tiffany Woodham of Abbeville, Georgia, Miss Anthony Gwynn of Athens, Georgia, and Miss Princess King of Eastman, Georgia. Survived Miss Lakeitha Monique Love, age 31, of 105 Dennis Street, Rochelle, Georgia. Mr. David Joshua Mitchell, age 26, of 304 Ridgeway Drive, Americus, Georgia, died Saturday, January 23rd, 2021, in Americus, Georgia. The funeral service for Mr. David Joshua Mitchell, age 26, was held Saturday, January 30th, on the grounds of the Friendship Baptist Church in Americus, Georgia. The pastor, Bishop Melvin McCluster, officiated. The burial followed at Sunset Memorial Gardens in Americus, Georgia. Survivors include his loving and devoted parents, Miss Angela Gardner and her husband, Mr. LaWarrior Gardner, and Mr. David Hawkins and his wife, Mrs. Patricia Hawkins, his beloved son, Master Dallas S. Mitchell of Kingsland, Georgia, his beloved companion, Miss Brianna Wimbush of Kingsland, Georgia, his beloved siblings, Mr. Lonnie Munson, Mr. Olentis Munson, Mrs. Shaquita Mitchell, Mrs. LaQuasha Pays, Mr. Mike Dotson, Miss Kayla Mitchell, Miss Anniana Brown, Mr. Gilbert Brown Jr., Mr. Travion Gardner, all of Americus, Georgia, Miss Kiel Hawkins of Albany, Georgia, Miss Tyana Mills, Mr. Andre Mills, and Mr. Adrian Mills. His beloved grandparents, Mr. Willie Mitchell of Hartford, Connecticut, Mrs. Gloria Durham of Americus, Georgia, and Mr. Charlie Gardner and his wife, Mrs. Linda Gardner of Americus, Georgia. His beloved aunts and uncles, Miss Rachel Daniels and her husband, Mr. David Daniels, Mr. Carlos Mitchell, Miss Paula Hawkins, Mrs. Kedra Favor, and his wife, and her husband, Mr. Melvin Favor, Miss Sharon Hall, Mr. Johnny Durham, Mr. Alfred Hawkins, Mr. Darian Hawkins, Mr. Jeffrey Hawkins, Miss Rachel Blackman, and her husband, Mr. Danny Blackman, Miss Candace Maxwell, Miss Tanya Washington, Miss Tabitha Mann, Miss Cheryl Henry, and her husband, Mr. Earl Henry, Miss LaDonna Barthel, and her husband, Mr. Bobby Barthel, and Miss Habetsit Bueller. A host of great aunts, great uncles, cousins, other relatives, and many, many sorrowing friends and employees survive Mr. David Joshua Mitchell, age 26, of 304 Ridgeway Drive, Americus, Georgia. Again, the family of Mother Frances Westbrook Williams of Cordell, Georgia, the family of Mr. Blake Alexander Robinson of Gray, Georgia, and Americus, Georgia, the family of Mr. Robert Butts Jr. of Cordell, Georgia, the family of Miss Lakeitha Monique Love of Rochelle, Georgia, the family of Mr. David Joshua Mitchell of Americus, Georgia, would like to thank their many friends for all of the many kindnesses shown to them during the hours of sorrow and bereavement during the past week. May God bless each of you, is their prayer. The J.W. Williams Funeral Directors serving Cordell and Vienna were in charge of each of these arrangements during the past week. And now, it is certainly with the deepest regret that we make the following announcement. Mother Betsy May Clark Powell, age 93, of 1114 Blackshear Road, Cordell, Georgia, died Sunday, January 24th, at the Chris Regional Hospital in Cordell, Georgia. Survivors include her loving and devoted children, Mrs. Brenda P. Ray and her husband, Mr. Leonard Ray, and Miss Deborah P. Ray and her husband, Mr. Spivey Ray, both of Cordell, Georgia. Mr. Charlie J. Power and his wife, Mrs. Joyce Power of Columbus, Georgia. Mr. John Power of Las Vegas, Nevada. Miss Bessie P. Slay of Cordell, Georgia. And Miss Priscilla P. Felton of Americus, Georgia. A beloved grandson whom she raised, Mr. Brenton R. Power and his wife, Mrs. Alicia Power of Jacksonville, Florida. A granddaughter she raised, Miss Valerie P. Mickens of Rex, Georgia. A beloved grandson she helped raise, Mr. Julius Sims of Great Lakes, Illinois. Her special grandchildren, Pam, Ivy, Dot, Kim, Victoria, Christina, Chris, Kristen, Aiden, Isaac III, Ryan, Christopher, Brian, LJ, Jaden, Gianna, Alicia, Lauren, Majesty, Alexis, LaRon, and Angel. 17 beloved great-grandchildren, a host of other relatives, and many, many sorrowing friends survive. Mother Betsy May Clark Power, age 93, of 1114 Blackshear Road, Cordele, Georgia. The funeral service for Mother Betsy May Clark Power, age 93, will be held today, Sunday, January 31st, at 11 a.m., graveside at Bethel Cemetery in Cordele, Georgia. Her pastor, Elder Darrell Leggett, pastor of the Cordele Institutional Church of God in Christ, will officiate. Mr. Wayne Bernard Doster, age 57, of 711 West 21st Avenue, Cordele, Georgia, died Tuesday, January 26, at his residence in Cordele, Georgia. Survivors include his loving and devoted mother, Mrs. Vernell Green Doster of Cordele, Georgia. His beloved sisters, Miss Jennifer Doster and Miss Velma Dunkins, and her husband, the Reverend R.L. Dunkins, both of Cordele, Georgia. His beloved aunts and uncles, Mrs. Gradine Ford and her husband, Deacon Tommy Ford, Jr., Miss Julia McDaniel, Miss Patricia Green, Deacon Whitford Green and his wife, Mrs. Brenda Green, and Mr. Oscar Green and his wife, Mrs. Mary Green, all of Cordele, Georgia. Mrs. Deborah West and her husband, Mr. Ronnie West of Pineview, Georgia. Miss Mary Fletcher, Miss Rena Harvey, and Miss Lenora Green, all of Cordele, Georgia. Mr. Carl Harvey of Columbus, Georgia, Mr. Charles Doster, Mr. Frankie Doster, and Miss Mary Doster, all of Cordele, Georgia. Miss Lena May Howard of Tampa, Florida. His beloved nieces and nephews, Mrs. Nakiva Holmes and her husband, Mr. Roderick Holmes of Columbus, Georgia, Mr. Loderick Doster, Mr. Fabian Doster, both of Cordele, Georgia, Mr. Javaris Cooks of Thomasville, Georgia, and a host of cousins, other relatives, and many, many sorrowing friends survive. Mr. Wayne Bernard Doster, age 57, of 711 West 21st Avenue, Cordele, Georgia. The funeral service for Mr. Wayne Bernard Doster, age 57, will be held today, Sunday, January 31st, at 2 p.m. graveside at the Westview Cemetery in Cordele, Georgia. His beloved brother-in-law, the Reverend R.L. Duncan, will officiate. Beloved songstress, Mrs. Shirley Jean Simmons Barton Jackson, age 75, of 902 South 13th Street, Cordele, Georgia, died Tuesday, January 26, at the Cordele Health and Rehabilitation Center in Cordele, Georgia. Survivors include her loving and devoted children, Miss Michelle J. Walker of Cordell, Georgia, Mr. Tony Barton and his wife, Ms. Raven Barton of Virginia Beach, Virginia, and Deacon Mr. James Bleach Jr. and his wife, Ms. Gayla Bleach of Cordell, Georgia. 5 beloved grandchildren, Mr. Antonio Barton, Mr. Miltavian Ray, Mr. Jonathan Walker, Mr. Tony R. Barton, and Mr. Timothy Barton. 10 beloved great-grandchildren, her loving and devoted sisters, Miss Thelma Hall and Miss Linda Porter, both of Atlanta, Georgia. Her beloved brother, Mr. Jimmy Simmons of Atlanta, Georgia. A beloved sister-in-law, Mrs. Annie Ruth Rogers of Cordell, Georgia. A host of nieces and nephews, many cousins, other relatives, and many, many sorrowing friends to include Mrs. Johnny Eva Byram of Cordell, Georgia, and her beloved Gethsemane Missionary Baptist Church family, survived beloved songstress Miss Shirley Jean Simmons Barton Jackson, age 75, of 902 South 13th Street, Cordell, Georgia. The funeral service for Mrs. Shirley Jean Simmons Barton Jackson, age 75, will be held today, Sunday, January 31st at 5 p.m. on the grounds of the Pleasant Valley Baptist Church Cemetery in Pinehurst, Georgia. Her pastor, the Reverend Cecil Straughter, pastor of the Gethsemane Missionary Baptist Church, will officiate. Deacon Carl Redding, age 56, of 609 West 17th Avenue, Cordell, Georgia, died Tuesday, January 26, at the South Georgia Medical Center in Valdosta, Georgia. Survivors include his loving and devoted wife, Mrs. Michelle Redding of Cordell, Georgia, his loving and devoted children, Ms. Zantrissa S. Battle, Mr. Carl Redding Jr., Ms. Shankiria T. Redding, Ms. Carlos M. Redding, and Mr. Cardarius J. Redding, all of Cordell, Georgia. His beloved grandchildren, Master Kingston Brown, Master Princeton Felton, Master Nolan Buchanan, and Master Royal Lester, all of Cordell, Georgia. His loving and devoted mother, Miss Minnie E. Redding of Cordell, Georgia. His beloved and devoted brothers, Mr. Ricky B. Redding and his wife, Mrs. Angela Redding of Atlanta, Georgia. Mr. Frederick Smith and his wife, Mrs. Michelle Smith of Cordell, Georgia. And Mr. Xavier Q. Smith and his wife, Mrs. Samantha Smith of Atlanta, Georgia. His loving, devoted aunts and uncles, Mrs. Lena Cross, Miss Lily Redding, Miss Clara McGill, Deacon Curtis Lucas, and Mr. Zell Lucas, all of Cordell, Georgia, Miss Jenny Kennedy of Atlanta, Georgia, and Miss Salitha Harris of Valdosta, Georgia. His beloved in-law, Mr. Demetrius Newsom and his wife, Mrs. Tasha Newsom, and Miss Lakeisha Hudson and her husband, Mr. Alvin Hudson, both of Cordell, Georgia. His beloved godchildren and a host of cousins, other relatives, and many, many sorrowing friends to include Miss Kimberly McKeever of Warner Robins, Georgia, survived Deacon Carl Redding, age 56, of 609 West 17th Avenue, Cordell, Georgia. The funeral service for Deacon Carl Redding, age 56, will be held Monday, February 1st at 12 noon at the Bethel graveside at the Bethel Cemetery in Cordell, Georgia. The Reverend Isaac H. Owens, pastor of the Mount Calvary Baptist Church will officiate. The public visitation will be held today from 1 p.m. until 5 p.m. at the J.W. Williams Funeral Home walk-up visitation site. Mother Cora Lee Sanders Palmer, age 86, of 109 Bass Street, Cordele, Georgia, died Saturday, January 23rd at her residence in Cordele, Georgia. Survivors include her loving and devoted children, Mr. Edward James Palmer and his wife, Miss Mary Palmer of Vienna, Georgia, Mr. Willie James Palmer, Miss Mary E. Coleman and her husband, Mr. Raymond Coleman, Mr. Johnny Palmer of Miami, Florida, 13 beloved grandchildren, 21 great-grandchildren, her beloved sisters-in-law, Mrs. Virginia Harris and her husband, Mr. Ronald Harris of Warner Robins, Georgia, and Mrs. Frances Thickpen and her husband, Mr. E.J. Thickpen of Parkland, Florida. A host of other relatives and many, many sorrowing friends, to include a special friend, Miss Geraldine Harvey, missionary Patty Relaford, and Pastor Diane Dean, survived Mother Cora Lee Sanders Palmer, age 86, of 109 Bass Street, Cordele, Georgia. The funeral service for Mother Cora Lee Sanders Palmer, age 86, will be held Monday, February 1st, graveside at the Bethel Cemetery in Cordele, Georgia. Her pastor, Elder Darrell Leggett, pastor of the Cordele Institutional Church of God in Christ, will officiate. Miss Dorothy May Sherman, age 57, of 702 West 23rd Avenue, Cordele, Georgia, died Wednesday, January 27, at the Chris Regional Hospital in Cordele, Georgia. Survivors include her loving and devoted daughter, Miss Sharon Felton, and her husband, Mr. Billy Felton of Cordele, Georgia. Her adopted children, Miss Renisha Hawkins, Miss Christona Jones, Miss Christine Jones, Miss Bernita Jones, Mr. Antonio Estabert and his wife, Miss Krista Estabert, Miss Yolanda Hunt, Miss Zante Wynn, Miss Darlene Brown, and Miss Cynthia Evans and her husband, Theodore Evans. Her beloved grandchildren and great-grandchildren, her stepfather, Mr. Henry Walker, and his wife, Miss Letha Walker, her beloved sisters, Miss Pauline Johnson and her husband, Mr. Willie Johnson, Miss Shirley Woods and her husband, Mr. Clyde Wood, Mrs. Juanita Jones, and Miss Mary Alice. Her beloved brothers, Mr. Oscar Green, Mr. Julius Dean, and Mr. Frank Green II. Her beloved sisters-in-law, Miss Sandra Green and Miss Monica Grover, a host of nieces, nephews, cousins, other relatives, and many, many sorrowing friends survive. Miss Dorothy May Sherman, age 57, of 702 West 23rd Avenue, Cordele, Georgia. The funeral service for Miss Dorothy May Sherman, age 57, will be held Wednesday, February 3rd at 1 p.m. graveside at the Bethel Cemetery in Cordele, Georgia. Her pastor, Dr. K.M. Williams, pastor of the Greater Morris Tabernacle Missionary Baptist Church, will officiate. The public walk-up viewing will be Tuesday, February 2nd, from 1 p.m. until 5 p.m. at the J.W. Williams Funeral Home. Mrs. Gwendolyn Ridley Royal, age 75, of 807 Meadow Drive, Cordell, Georgia, died Thursday, January 28th, at the Chris Regional Hospital in Cordell, Georgia. Survivors include her loving and devoted husband, Mr. Eddie Lee Royal of Cordell, Georgia, her beloved and devoted children, Mr. Aubrey Ridley and his wife, Mrs. Linda Ridley of Warner Robins, Georgia, and Miss Texana Royal of Cordell, Georgia. 5 beloved grandchildren, Mrs. LaQuana Williams, Miss Linda Ridley, Mr. Joshua Goodman, Mr. Aubrey Ridley II, and Miss Christine Royal Williamson. 1 beloved great-grandchild, a beloved brother, Mr. Joseph Crocker, and his wife, Mrs. Lisa Crocker of Griffin, Georgia. Her sisters and brothers-in-law, Mrs. Edith Outlaw, and her husband, Mr. Arthur Outlaw, Miss Jen Son Royal, Mr. Raymond Dollison, and Mr. Frank Royal, and his wife, Mrs. Danielle Royal. A host of nieces, nephews, cousins, other relatives, and many, many sorrowing friends survive. Mrs. Gwendolyn Ridley Royal, age 75, of 807 Meadow Drive, Cordell, Georgia. The funeral service for Mrs. Gwendolyn Ridley Royal, age 75, will be held Thursday, February 4th at 12 noon, graveside at the Pleasant Hill Baptist Church Cemetery, Hatley Community, Cordell, Georgia, with the minister selected officiating. The public walk-up viewing will be Wednesday, February 3rd, from 1 p.m. until 5 p.m. at the J.W. Williams Funeral Home. Mr. Jesse C. Gaines, age 84, of 2128 South 10th Street, Cordell, Georgia, died Thursday, January 28th, at his residence in Cordell, Georgia. Survivors include his loving and devoted wife, Mrs. Christine Jenkins Gaines of Cordell, Georgia. His beloved children, Miss Venetia Bagley of Cordell, Georgia, Mr. Jesse S. Gaines of Warner Robins, Georgia, Miss Racy T. Gaines, and Mr. Rayful R. Gaines and his wife, Mrs. Camisha Gaines, all of Cordell, Georgia, Mrs. Ophel V. Taylor and her husband, Mr. Michael Taylor of Atlanta, Georgia, Mr. Stiffy C. Gaines and Mr. Travis J. Gaines, both of Valdosta, Georgia, a host of grandchildren and great-grandchildren, his beloved brothers, Mr. Henry C. Gaines and Mr. Walter Gaines and his wife, Mrs. Sarah Gaines, both of Cordell, Georgia, his brothers and sisters-in-law, Mr. Lester Jones, Miss Ruby Jones, Miss Ann Rouse and her husband, Mr. Alvin Rouse, Miss Jeanette Jones, and Miss Gloria Jones, all of Cordell, Georgia, Mr. Joe C. Jones and his wife, Mrs. Jackie Jones of San Antonio, Texas, and Mr. Tony Jones and his wife, Mrs. Trixie Jones of Atlanta, Georgia, a host of nieces, nephews, cousins, other relatives, and many, many sorrowing friends survive. Mr. Jesse C. Gaines, age 84, of 2128 South 10th Street, Cordell, Georgia. The public walk-up visitation for Mr. Jesse C. Gaines, age 84, will be held Friday, February 5th, from 3:30 p.m. until 6 p.m. at the J.W. Williams Funeral Home. Miss Margaret Mumphrey, age 71, of 504 West 23rd Avenue, Cordell, Georgia, died Friday, January 29, at the Chris Regional Hospital in Cordell, Georgia. Survivors include her devoted companion, Mr. Norris Hodge, her loving and devoted daughters, Mrs. Arshura D. Hodge and Miss Belinda Ann Hodge, both of Atlanta, Georgia, 9 beloved grandchildren, 3 great-grandchildren, her loving and devoted sisters, Miss Bernice Harris of Jamaica, New York, Miss Ruthie Mumphrey Johnson, and Miss Maddie Pearl Brown, both of Cordell, Georgia. Her beloved brothers, Deacon Edward Lee Mumphrey and Deacon Roger Mumphrey, both of Cordell, Georgia. Deacon Lorenzo Mumphrey of Atlanta, Georgia. A host of nieces, nephews, cousins, other relatives, and many, many sorrowing friends survive. Miss Margaret Mumphrey, age 71, of 504 West 23rd Avenue, Cordell, Georgia. The funeral service for Miss Margaret Mumphrey will be held Friday, February 5th at 2 p.m. at the J.W. Williams Funeral Home Portico in Cordell, Georgia, with the minister selected officiating. Mr. Aldine Holmes, age 47, of 207 Lorraine Avenue, Americus, Georgia, died Sunday, January 17, at the Phoebe Sumter Medical Center in Americus, Georgia. Survivors include his loving and devoted children, Miss Shanika Holmes, Miss Mary Holmes, Mrs. Alexis Holmes, Miss Chastity Holmes, and Miss Jace Holmes, all of Americus, Georgia. 5 beloved grandchildren, his beloved and devoted godmother, Miss Ola Mae Lyles of Americus, Georgia. His beloved sisters, Miss Lizzie Gibson and her husband, Mr. Henry Gibson of Raleigh, North Carolina. Miss Stella Mae Love of Tallahassee, Florida. Mrs. Betty Foster and her husband, Mr. Bobby Foster, Miss Pranitha Mabel, Miss Dorothy Mabel and her husband, Mr. Donnie Mabel, all of Americus, Georgia. His beloved brothers, Mr. William Hudson of Leslie, Georgia, Mr. Ricardo Holmes, Mr. Willie Holmes, and Mr. Timothy Holmes, all of Americus, Georgia. His beloved aunts and uncles, Mr. Willie Bateman, and his wife, Miss Jessie Bateman, Mrs. Dorothy Hamilton, and her husband, Mr. James Hamilton, Mrs. Evelyn Asbury and her husband, Mr. Jimmy Asbury, Mrs. Georgia Johnson and her husband, Mr. Lawrence Johnson, Mrs. Patricia Bell and her husband, Mr. David Bell, Mrs. Johnny Lyles, Mr. Joe Lewis Mabel, and Mr. Johnny Mabel and his wife, Mrs. Patricia Mabel, all of Americus, Georgia. A host of other relatives and many, many sorrowing friends survive. Mr. Aldine Holmes, age 47, of 207 Lorraine Avenue, Americus, Georgia. The funeral service for Mr. Aldine Holmes, age 47, will be announced at a later date pending the completion of the arrangements. Miss Courtney Williamson, age 34, of 168 Amelia Drive, Byram, Georgia, died Friday, January 26, at the Houston Medical Center in Warner Robins, Georgia. Survivors include her loving and devoted children, Miss Michaela K. Williamson, Miss Zalitha S. Guyton, Master Tristan J. Watson, all of Byram, Georgia. Her loving and devoted parents, Mrs. Latricia Taylor and her husband, Mr. Rodney Taylor, Byram, Georgia, and Mr. Joey Williamson of Americus, Georgia. Her loving and devoted sisters, Miss Adrian Williamson and Mr. Travis Walker, both of Byram, Georgia, Miss Kanisha Cross and Miss Kiana Robinson, both of Cordele, Georgia. Her beloved grandparents, Mr. Willie Frank and Miss Jessie Walker, Mr. Elder Lawyer Williamson and Miss Helen Davis, all of Cordele, Georgia. Her beloved aunt and uncles, Miss Luana Davis of Cordele, Georgia, Mr. Jeffrey Lucas of Lithonia, Georgia, Mr. Roderick Walker, Miss Latrevian Walker, both of Weiner, Georgia, a host of great aunts, great uncles, nieces, nephews, cousins, other relatives, and many, many sorrowing friends survive. Miss Courtney C. Williamson, age 34, of 168 Amelia Drive, Byram, Georgia. The funeral service for Miss Courtney C. Williamson, age 34, will be announced at a later date pending the completion of the arrangements. United States Army veteran, Mr. Jonathan Daniel Lawrence, age 37, of 506 South 15th Street, Cordele, Georgia, died Friday, January 29th, of injuries sustained in an automobile accident. Survivors include his beloved wife, Miss Jorah Lawrence of Cordele, Georgia, his loving and devoted mother, Miss Cynthia Dent of Cordele, Georgia, his beloved children, Mr. Kente Lawrence, Miss Demar Applin, Mr. Jonathan Lawrence Jr., Miss Janaya Lawrence, Miss Alicia Lawrence, Mr. Nathan Lawrence, all of Cordele, Georgia, his loving and caring sibling, Mr. Demetrius Ashley, Mr. Carlos Lawrence, Mr. Devon Lawrence, and Mr. Sterling Dent, all of Cordele, Georgia. A host of aunts, uncles, cousins, nieces, and nephews, other relatives, and many, many sorrowing friends survive. United States Army veteran, Mr. Jonathan Daniel Lawrence, age 37, of 506 South 15th Street, Cordele, Georgia. The funeral service for United States Army veteran, Mr. Jonathan Daniel Lawrence, age 36, will be announced at a later date pending the completion of the arrangements. Mr. John Henry Hawkins, age 66, of 13252 Cannonville Road, Rochelle, Georgia, died Saturday, January 30th at Centennial Hospital in Nashville, Tennessee. Survivors include his loving and devoted wife, Ms. Geraldine King Hawkins of Rochelle, Georgia, his loving and devoted children, Mr. John D. Hawkins and Mr. Andre Hawkins, both of Americus, Georgia, Miss Alicia Hawkins and Miss Aubrey Hawkins, both of Macon, Georgia, Miss Natasha Cooper of Americus, Georgia, a beloved stepson, Mr. Tarvis King of Pineview, Georgia, a host of grandchildren, a beloved sister, Mrs. Jimmy Richardson of Americus, Georgia, a host of other relatives, and many, many sorrowing friends survive. Mr. John Henry Hawkins, age 66, of 13252 Cannonville Road, Rochelle, Georgia. The funeral service for Mr. John Henry Hawkins, age 66, will be announced at a later date, pending the completion of the arrangements. Mrs. Claudine Blackburn Burden, age 63, of 1605 Oconee Circle, Cordele, Georgia, died Saturday, January 30th, at her residence in Cordele, Georgia. Survivors include her loving and devoted children, Ms. Alicia Blackburn, Mr. Demetrius White, both of Cordele, Georgia, her beloved stepchildren, Mrs. Felicia Campbell and her husband, Sir Leroy Campbell, Mr. Antonio Mathis and Miss Latasha Mathis, both of Vienna, Georgia, Miss Shantae Cobb of Doolin, Georgia, Miss Tracy West of Unadilla, Georgia, 9 beloved grandchildren, 1 great-grandchild, her beloved and devoted sibling, Miss Julia Walker, and her husband, Brother Freddie Walker, and Mr. Larry McLeod, both of Cordele, Georgia, Mrs. Cynthia Hunter and her husband, Mr. Eddie Hunter of Washington, D.C., a host of nieces, nephews, many cousins, other relatives, and many, many sorrowing friends survive. Miss Claudine Blackburn Burden, age 63, of 1605 Oconee Circle, Cordele, Georgia. The funeral service for Mrs. Claudine Blackburn Burden, age 63, will be announced at a later date, pending the completion of the arrangements. Mr. Mickey Griffin, age 53, of 112 Santa Rosa Drive, Americus, Georgia, died Saturday, January 30th at the Phoebe Sumter Medical Center in Americus, Georgia. Survivors include his loving and devoted wife, Mrs. Annie Ruth Hawkins Griffin of Americus, Georgia, his loving and devoted children, Mr. Terrence Chapman, Miss Sierra Hawkins, Mr. Joseph Hawkins, Mr. Mickey Griffin, and Mr. Kyrie Harris, his loving and devoted grandchildren, Master Terrence Chapman and Master Jordan Fuller, his loving and caring mother, Mother Loistine R. Griffin, his beloved sister, Miss Cheryl Limehouse, and Miss Beverly Griffin, his beloved brothers, Mr. Vonnie Newberry and Mr. Danny Griffin, his beloved mother-in-law, Mother Melan Hawkins, a host of nieces, nephews, cousins, other relatives, and many, many sorrowing friends survive. Mr. Mickey Griffin, age 53, of 112 Santa Rosa Drive, Americus, Georgia. The funeral service for Mr. Mickey Griffin, age 53, will be announced at a later date, pending the completion of the arrangements. The J.W. Williams Funeral Directors, serving Cordele and Vienna, are in charge of each of these arrangements during this week. Friends, that conclude our funeral notices for this morning. And as always, we do remind you concerning our pre-funeral arrangements planning available at the J.W. Williams Funeral Home, with packages available with a single pay, a 3-year pay, and a 5-year pay. So please stop by and talk with us concerning your pre-funeral arrangements needs available at the J.W. Williams Funeral Home. Our program this morning is dedicated to the bereaved families whose loved ones was laid to rest during the past week. The family of Mother Frances Westbrook Williams of Cordele, Georgia. The family of Mr. Blake Alexander Robinson of Gray, Georgia, and Americus, Georgia. The family of Mr. Robert Butts Jr. of Cordele, Georgia. The family of Miss Lakeitha Monique Love of Rochelle, Georgia. The family of Mr. David Joshua Mitchell of Americus, Georgia. Our program is dedicated to the bereaved families whose loved ones will be laid to rest during this week. The family of Mother Bessie Mae Clark Powell of Cordele, Georgia. The family of Mr. Wayne Bernard Doster of Cordele, Georgia. The family of beloved songstress Miss Shirley Jean Simmons Barton Jackson of Cordele, Georgia. The family of Deacon Carl Redding of Cordele, Georgia. The family of Mother Coralie Sanders Palmer of Cordele, Georgia. The family of Miss Dorothy Mae Sherman of Cordele, Georgia. The family of Mrs. Gwendolyn Ridley Royal of Cordele, Georgia. The family of Mr. Jesse Gaines of Cordele, Georgia. The family of Miss Margaret Montfrey of Cordele, Georgia. The family of Mr. Aldine Holmes of Americus, Georgia. The family of Miss Courtney C. Williamson of Byram, Georgia. The family of United States Army veteran Mr. Jonathan Daniel Lawrence of Cordele, Georgia. The family of Mr. John Henry Hawkins of Rochelle, Georgia. The family of Miss Claudine Blackburn Burden of Cordele, Georgia. The family of Mr. Mickey Griffin of Americus, Georgia. This selection is dedicated to all of the sick and shut-in, to all patients in the local and surrounding hospitals, nursing homes, and rehabilitation centers, to our beloved ministers and their devoted family members, to all retired educators, to the men and women serving in our armed forces, both stateside and abroad, to all veterans, and to everyone who listens to our program on each Sunday morning. It's a pleasure for us to bring it to you. And would like to remind you that our calendars, the J.W. Williams Funeral Home calendars for 2021 are in, and feel free to stop by the funeral home and pick up your calendar. Our program goes out in memory of our past president, Dr. Napoleon Williams, to my wife, Mrs. Calandra Wilkerson Parker, to my son, Jai Wilkerson Parker. This selection goes out to my mother-in-law, Mrs. Deland Hall, and family, to my brother, retired Chief Master Sergeant Norman F. Dexter, and his wife, Dr. Gwendolyn Maxine Dexter, to my sister, Miss Manny Mae Johnson, better known as Sister Girl, and Miss Patsy Jackson, and her husband, Mr. Jim Jackson of Cordele, Georgia. Goes out to my nephew, Deacon Kenneth Smith, program chairman of the Greater Morris Tabernacle Missionary Baptist Church, to our pastor, Dr. K.M. Williams, inviting you to worship this morning via conference call, a Facebook Live at 9 a.m. And again, to everyone, we do encourage each and every one to maintain the guidelines set up by the CD system.
Yes, I'm going to walk. Oh, that will keep my way. Oh, child.
Thank you for joining us this morning. We hope you've enjoyed our program. Tune in again on next Sunday morning. In your time of need, contact a competent, capable, and dependable staff at the J.W. Williams Funeral Home.